This conference will now be recorded.
Josh, next slide. So welcome everyone to our November Combine Coordinator and PI call. We have a agenda today that starts as always with a very quick study recruitment update. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this call focusing on PI leadership and engagement. And on next month's call, we'll do a parallel session focusing on coordinator leadership and engagement. I think many of us know that the coordinator often leads the PI rather than the other way around. Janine, our study monitor, will talk a little bit about study monitoring and particularly what we've been doing and will continue to do over the next few months, which is really monitor and double check to see which patients have experienced study endpoints that indicate loss of response. We're probably going to gloss over the next set of items related to the data entry user's manual and do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the new supplemental visit form, which is now live and we urge your centers to use when appropriate. Next slide. So we have 42 sites that are participating in Combine. All of them are activated and should be recruiting. As of the end of last month, we had 193 patients randomized. 33 of our 42 sites have recruited at least one patient. And Children's Hospital of the King's Daughter in New York is our lead site to date with 16 participants. Although I know that Cincinnati Children's is really on the tail. Next slide. So this graph here shows the number of patients that have been randomized in orange compared to our goal in green. And so we are exactly 46% of the way towards our goal and running at this point about 18 months or so behind schedule. But we are in discussions with PCORI about a couple of things we can do to extend the time for which we can recruit our study participants. So my message to you all is continue recruiting as fast as you can. And we will have some additional time to recruit our study population. Next slide. This graph here shows the percent of centers that are submitting their weekly pre-consent data. As a reminder, the pre-consent forms are the site's way of tracking which patients who are starting on an anti-TNF might be eligible for Combine. If they are eligible for Combine, are they approached? And if approached, were they consented? And it is our way as a study team to know that the site has their lights on and is paying attention to the possibilities for recruitment. And what you can see here is that really over the last 2 to 3 months, the percent of sites with their lights on has really shifted from 70% to about 50%, which is very much a worrisome trend. I will also parenthetically note that October was our worst month for recruitment in over a year, which I think reflects the fact that many sites just don't seem to have the light on. So please think about what's going on at your site. If there is something that is systematic, please address it. If there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know. If there's anything we can't do to help, please let us know what's going on at your site so that at least we don't continue to harass you or have some understanding as to what might be going on and the contextual factors at your site. Next slide. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm hoping that Julie Massey is on the line and can kick off this next bit of our call this morning about best practices for PI leadership and engagement. Julie, are you on?
I am. Thank
Fantastic.
you so much.
Take it away.
Sure. Sorry, there's a call behind me here. So for PI leadership and engagement, one of the missions of the Improve Care Now network is to really consider how we can share seamlessly and steal shamelessly. And so we wanted to spotlight some best practices and lessons learned about how Cincinnati Children's and Nemours Wilmington had become best practices, or what we'd like to encourage the combined champions at their sites. And I know that Cincinnati Children's couldn't be on right now, so I will kind of cover what Dr. Minar had shared. But as you can see here on the slide, he's the third PI that picked up the project kind of midstream, and is also one of the centers that has high recruitment and a participant that almost completed the study follow-up. In comparison, Dr. Zarella Molly Rios, who couldn't be on the call today, but I know Kim Klipner is on, is also a successful center with 10 participants recruited and steady recruitment and identification of patients. If we can jump to the next slide. So for Cincinnati Children's, some examples that they had shared that had kind of generated their success was really that they have buy-in from the entire team. With over 30 providers, they really encourage everyone to be on the same page. And so they spent a lot of time really clarifying what and why the study was important and how to increase buy-in and the communication across their providers. One of their other successful strategies is here in Bullet 2 about and also in Bullet 3, about being available and presenting that study early on. They really want to have families be encouraged to watch the video and understand, that opportunities are out there. And so what they have found is that when the patients are pre-informed and they start to ask more specific questions, especially around the side effects. And so that's been a great strategy for them, just to start the conversation. So that way, when a patient is interested, if they have any questions, the site PI can be available whether they're in the clinic or over the phone, as well as to kind of set up the fact that the CRC might be calling after the fact to approach them about the study. Additionally, they do have regular engagement meetings where they identify their patients and just really have open communication among their providers. And so they've really been thinking about how they can enhance their emails and make sure that providers know about the study and they mention it to their patients. And, again, just kind of that process behind it on what happens next with using the video. And just having a lot of talking points, I think, all the way around. It's really kind of worked for them.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
On the next slide, if we can jump to
I bet
Nemours Wilmington. Kim, I don't know if you want to kind of share these slides, but at a high level, again, for Nemours Wilmington, having frequent meetings with the faculties and generating the flyers has really helped them stay focused on their patient recruitment. Kim, would you like to jump in and add anything to that?
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say we have 12 patients recruited. I don't know why it keeps showing 10. I think one of them is the patient that transferred that doesn't show up anymore, but had to throw that in. So we have 12 patients that we've randomized, and I think where we get most of our referrals from is actually the fellows and probably the nurses second. And I think that's been a big part of our success is the fellows have it ingrained in their head that if a patient is starting anti-TNF, to let Zarella know. So we usually get word pretty quickly from the fellows, and then the nurses have been pretty good too. They don't necessarily remember every time, but it's a supplement that we've gotten notification several times from the nurses like, oh hey, just heard that we need to get pre-authorization for this patient or whatever. They're starting Humira or whatnot.
I also thought it was interesting how you've engaged, families using Facebook and, advertising it during the IBD Family Days. So, again, I think there is the opportunity to just think at communication at all levels and just thinking about the process. But again, I want to give the chance for anyone to ask any questions about how these ideas might be applied at your center, or just different things that you've thought about, or questions that you may have. We have asked the centers to share kind of some of their documents and processes that have worked. And so once we receive those, we're happy to put them out for other centers that might want to compare how their processes work into these two centers that have had some success.
Yeah, it really is a lot easier to borrow a PowerPoint presentation or the contents of an email or talking points that we give to fellows than to create them ourselves. And so both for these two practices or others on the call, if you have any materials that you can share with Julie, we'll make sure that they get posted on SharePoint and highlighted in a newsletter and distributed. But, my question for Nemours Wilmington is, every year you all have new fellows. Do you have any written materials, or how do you bring those new fellows on board so they know to let you and Zarela know about new patients? Similarly, as new nurses are hired, how do you bring them on board? As new faculty are hired, how do you bring them on board? But any materials that you have that the other sites can adapt would be great.
I don't think we have any specific materials. It just comes from the meetings and stuff. And Zarela, I think, is one of the close mentors for the fellows, so she's very involved with them. And, they'll talk to her too, about different patients. And I think it's just their office is also right directly across from hers, so that probably makes it easier too.
Yeah. So it's all just sort of informal and off the cuff.
Yeah, usually it's just like, oh, hey, Zarela, we're starting this kid on anti-TNF. Every so often there might be an epic message that comes through or something, but usually it's just kind of in passing. Yeah. It's nothing formal.
I guess my question is, how does Zarela let the fellows know that they should be on the lookout for patients who are starting anti-TNF? What does Zarela tell them about the purpose of Combine that's geared towards a new fellow coming in?
I don't think it would be any different than what you tell any other physicians. Just like, hey, this is the study, this is what we're doing, this is important, and let me know if you have any anti-TNF patients.
Gotcha. But yeah, for any of the other sites on this call, if you do have any sort of communication tips or tools, please do share them with Julie. All right, next slide. So we're going to shift gears over to study monitoring, and hopefully Janine, our study monitor, is on the call. As I mentioned in the beginning, one of the things that we're really working on this fall and winter is looking at the data on patients who may have met one of their study outcomes. And sometimes we see the drug has stopped, and the reason listed is that a patient met a study outcome, but we can't find record of that outcome, in the other supporting data, like was that patient hospitalized? Did that patient have surgery? Did that patient fail to wean from steroids? Or conversely, sometimes we see that a patient has been on steroids for more than 16 weeks after randomization, yet the site has not identified that patient as meeting a outcome. And when we see those discrepancies, Janine will be getting in touch with sites to figure out what's going on and resolve them. The most important thing we can do after randomization is to identify patients when they meet study endpoints. Those are the two things that we need to make this study a success. patients in the door and randomized and participating in the study, and good data on outcomes. If we have those two things, everything else is going to fall into place. So Janine, I will let you take it away and talk about some of your work in this regard.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. You covered all that very well. It is our focus right now, as Mike said, at the study outcomes. And what that means for the study is this is what we publish. This is the bottom line. This is what we found out. And every data point counts. So this is my way of posting, and I did call it the scariest because I started working on this in Halloween. But this is, when this comes across the data, are the points that give us the most fright, let's say. That missing provider review, and maybe we should share process between CRC and PIs in getting these forms completed in a timely manner. That date that the PI completes that provider review is very important. It demonstrates oversight of that patient, whether it's an adverse event provider review or outcome provider review. Those forms that are accessed only by the provider, the timeliness in getting that review done is critically important. It shows that you're really on the ball with the study. You are providing the safety oversight that you promised for that particular patient. So when we see that stretched out longer than 10 days, it's pretty scary on my end, and it's hard to justify. So those that are very successful, it might be a good idea, Mike, if we ask them to share how they're getting that done, what the process of communication is between the two, the PI and the CRC. So I listed some other things here for you to look at. Almost everything on this list has to do with missing data. Missing data is a killer, and it's always at this point in the study that things start to slack off a bit. And this is right when we really need to be on the ball. And, we've all promised these kids that have come in and given us their time and their arm at times for blood draws, that we're going to do our very best to answer the question that we're asking. And so we can't do that without good data. And so that really is the bottom line of what we're asking here, is to continue to be faithful to get these reviews done and get these answered in a proper manner. Almost everything here, as I said, has some relationship to missing data. That steroid look, whether they're still on steroids at week 16, it shows that they haven't weaned. I can't tell unless you give me that data in that ConMed form. I can't tell that they've stopped. So if you put it in there as continuing and you never look at that ConMed form again, that's a problem. That form is critically important to answer our question here. Same thing with the post-week 26 look, the SPCDI, all of that comes into a report to me, and all of those stars need to align and support that response that the PI is giving as far as this is the outcome, the final outcome for that patient. So I mentioned on the call earlier in the week that you will be receiving a form from us that outlines the outcome as we see it in the data. We really need you to give good time and attention to that to make sure that the response that I'm seeing in the data is the response that you intended. Some of these are going to be, some of your first enrollees. You got better at this as time went on. So, make sure that you were consistent all the way through in your responses. Any questions then on what I've shared? And at any time, you should always be able to reach out to your study monitor. The study monitor is there to support you, to help you when things go awry. And I don't know of any CRC who has not had things go awry at one time or another, but that's the person you can reach out to help you walk through and get things righted again, get the documentation down, any corrections that need to be made. I really am here for you to use in that way. So be sure that you do reach out when you've got a question about how things should roll. And is the same way, very open door. You can call her anytime. The two of us talk a lot, so we can work things out, but not asking the question is the worst thing you can do. So now that I've said question 3 times, any questions on anything that I have provided today, anything I can do to help us get this done, to be better at data entry? Okay, Mike, that seems like a no, but I'm just an email away, so don't hesitate.
Thanks, Janine. Next slide. And I think, Anne, we're shifting to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So just some general study updates here. We want, as per usual, for you to always be checking that SharePoint site. We currently have up some new documents. The DSMB letter is up there. This often needs to go to your local IRB, so feel free to grab it and submit it as you do your continuing review. You're also going to find an updated data users manual and the supplemental visit form, a new paper CRF. And where the electronic CRF is now part of the combined site. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. Okay, so really quickly, because time is running short here, I want you to know that that data users manual is available for you to use. It takes you through virtually step by step of every part of data that you're trying to enter. Don't be hesitant about checking that. If you have a question about where something should go or how you should input stuff, please check out this user's manual. Our current edition is version 6.0, and it includes all of our new forms and everything else that has been added this past year. Next up, I want to remind everyone about the data change request process. Very, very easy thing for you to do. You're going to have to do this often when Josh or I or Janine ask you to change things or take care of some exceptions. This form is on the SharePoint site, and you will fill it out, submit it to the help desk. Typically what they will do is unlock the file for you so that you can go in and make your changes, but they should redirect anything that you need to do. So they'll either unlock it for you so you can make changes, or they'll help you make any changes if you're running into some strange database issues that have come up just recently. A couple people are experiencing those. So please use this form. Super easy to do. Next slide. The supplemental visit form. So this is a biggie here with us. So it's helping us capture some of that missing data that Janine was just talking about. So the supplemental visit form, or I like to think of it as supplemental data, is used in situations when an ICN registry visit hasn't been input. So there are a couple of instances when this happens. For example, when a patient has seen an infusion and the provider and CRC just go in and quickly do a quick exam and get some information. That's usually the most common time that a registry visit isn't typically input. We want you to be able to enter any of this data that's typically provided here. So what is typically handled on the registry visit that you're going to now find in this form is on the next slide. So the biggies are height, the PGA, and the labs that are typically put in for the registry visit. So this is all super important combined data that we are hoping to capture. So another big thing is that this is all retroactive. So please go back, and for any time that you are missing a registry visit, see if you might have some of these labs that you already have the data on. Just input them into this visit form, and we should be good to go. Next slide. Where are you going to find this? It's all factored into your visit tabs. So each one of your visits, you're going to see the supplemental visit section is down about midway. You're going to have the option to check off, yes, I will skip this section if you are inputting a registry visit. Please either check this box off or input the data. This way that we know that it's not actually missing, that you haven't glossed over it, that you haven't maybe overlooked it. So if you check that box, then we will know that this was intentionally meant to go into a registry visit data. Next up. Okay, another thing that we're still plugging is the Resource Parents new flyer brochure is in with the IRB and to be approved. That will be sent out to the site soon. So this is really, it's a service available to all the parents and patients to talk to other combined parents that have been trained by the UNC team. They can answer typical questions that many families have as they're about to go into the study. And if you do have a parent that would like to talk to another resource parent, then please email me and I will send a name for you so that you have them to go. But just know that the flyer and brochure is going to be coming out soon. Next slide. And our typical who's who, please reach out to us. Any one of us will redirect if the question isn't meant for the right person. We will always ship it to whoever it needs to go to. So the big thing is just ask, and we will get you an answer. Mike, do you want to close out?
Thanks, Anne, and thanks so much to all of you for attending our November PI coordinator call. We'll let you get back with your busy days, but please do continue to chug away with recruitment and follow-up and data entry. We need all of that effort and meticulous attention to detail to make this a success. And just a plug for next month's call as well, where we will be highlighting some coordinator best practices and some ways that effective coordinators can, quote, manage their site PIs. But until then, thanks for all you do. Have a good day. Bye-bye.